Hey everybody, Quantum here, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at some updated tournament results from the first 2 weeks of December. And this is a pretty important inflection point because we've seen what's probably considered the most serious tournament to date. I know DLCs are obviously pretty important, but it's been a while since we had one of those. But the final deck lists, hopefully accurate this time, have been updated for the EU Championship. We'll take a look at that, as well as the conclusion of the LCCC. I believe the final rounds happened today. I haven't actually looked at them because I was obviously working, but Artifacts ended up taking it, so that's cool to see. And we talked about this, right? We talked about how these lists were submitted at the start of the format and things would evolve and change. We talked about, cutting Ursula Deceiver, adding in bells for the genie interactions, things that we were seeing evolve in the meta, extra Clarabelles, cutting this Peter Pan, things like that. Do we include snakes, yes or no? And what's interesting is Artifacts did win an LCQ and played in the European Championship, so we'll see what his deck list was in there, because obviously, like I said, that's probably the most serious tournament that you're going to be playing in, so you'll bring your best list there. Moyen, interesting to see on Purple Steel, coming in the top 4. Really interesting list on the 4 Gontus. I believe this is the same list that Spessy would have played, right, when he played Dale in the first round, when he subbed for Moyen. So I do like this list. I think it's pretty solid. Again, just that consistency factor. And I'm happy to see that Zach Bivens ended up doing well. Tremendous player, obviously. Just hasn't won that big tournament just yet. But I think a DLC win in the future for him is definitely on the cards. Again, start of the format, Steel Song, but very consistent list. When you need to see a card, you're probably gonna have it. The 4 Zeus and the 4 Whole New World, we know, sometimes that can be a little clunky, but all in all, with the 4 Gaston and the 4 Ariel, and the Ursula, you should always have a singer for at least the Zeus. So yeah, I do like this list a lot. I'm glad to see that he had success with it. So again, we looked at those deck lists already. Let's go and take a look at what happened in terms of the updated deck list for the EU Championship. I guess we'll start with Artifacts, who got top 32, so still a decent showing overall out of 96 players. If I can just find him, there he is right there. And yeah, like we discussed, Snake ended up making its way back into the list. No Gazelles, not even any Bonsais now. Those have been cut. When you think about it, like Snake is a 3-3, Bonsai is a 3-2, Uninkable, Quest for 2, this Quest for 1. This still does the job of contesting the Flynn. You lose tempo with the Snake, which, this is a tempo-oriented deck, which is probably why it wasn't included at the start. But when you look at Snake, and obviously Fox, and the utility that these 2 cards have in a deck like this, bounce back my Merfolk to replay and have in a ready state for 2 lore, bounce back Tamago for burn potential, Ursula for Song Rip, Kit for bounce, Crab for +3, White Rose for lore, Genie for card draw and or to protect, Goat for lore, Rabbit for draw, Bell for damage redistribution again, Elsa for the retap down. Like, pretty much almost every card, and even 1-drop Clarabelle to banish an item. Like, almost every card in the deck has value to be bounced and replayed, right? So sacrifice some of that tempo, some of that aggression for a little bit more control and flexibility. I think it's overall well warranted, especially since, unlike with Ruby Amethyst, where we know, from like set 2, it was sometimes a liability with Snake because, do you have the 1-drop? If you don't and you only have Snake, it's like, oh my gosh, like I have nothing on 1 or 2. You're always going to have something on 1 with a deck like this. You play like 14 1-drops, right? So yeah, it's pretty much guaranteed. If you have Snake and no other 2-drop, you probably have a 1-drop to play. And then, yeah, no Ursula, like we discussed, and the addition of Clarabelle, the addition of Belle. So again, these are just like meta developments. I'm not saying that I pioneered these by any means, so please don't take it that way. This is just, I'm reporting on the trends that I see in the meta, and the trend we were seeing, as you can see very much in this report, Belle is the card of the format, basically, is a surprise card of the format. Everybody's on it. Speaking of which, when we take a look at the winning list, the original video and the original deck list that was posted had like 3 Tremaine and 3 Medusa, 2 Rabbits, 1 Bell, and I literally commented in that video, it's there. If you go back and check, I was like, I don't understand these ratios. Like, this player must have been on some kind of superior astral plane to be able to pilot a deck like this, because from what I've been seeing with other top players in games, just from my own testing, 4 Genie or 3 Genie and 3 Rabbit, but 3 Rabbit does seem to be the staple now, as well as 3 or 4 Genies. 2 Bells in Ruby Amethyst seem to be what most players want to go for. And then at most 2 Tremaine, sometimes 1, but 2, and then 2 to 3 Medusa, depending on if you want to play the Sisu or not, and this player obviously playing the Sisu. So it's interesting to see once the deck list's updated, like I would have absolutely zero problem taking this list and just running with it. I'm a huge fan of this list. This is probably how I would build Ruby Amethyst myself. I may go down to one Tremaine, depending on, again, local meta, what you expect. This was a great meta call, though, from Domingo, because red-blue was the most popular deck in the room, and Tremaine is a better card into red-blue, right? Because they're playing big bangers, and Tremaining away a Tamatoa or something as their only character on board is huge. Whereas something like Medusa obviously has limited value into red-blue, but is decent into like the tempo-oriented decks and the aggro decks, which, you know, helps you beat out other genies, etc. So it's kind of a meta call on your ratios here, and this is totally fine. Like this has good coverage, right? If you see one, you don't see the other, it should be okay. You have brawls as well. Yeah, this list though, very, very solid. The bells in testing just feel great, because the Elsa being able to like tap down, throw itself into something, get 2 or 3 damage on it, next turn bell the damage away because the Elsa has evasive, so it's like it protected. It's really, really strong. Yeah, bells are going up in price, guys. I picked up a couple of extra non-foil copies when they were like $1 still. And I have my foils, but I wish I would have got more foils because I only have 2. Because I mean, you probably don't ever play 4, but I don't know. It's such a beautiful card, anyways, right? I am interested in some of. I think we saw one of the red-blue lists, but I am interested in the other ones here. This is the one that we did not see. Oh no, this is the one that we did see. 4 Tipo, 3 Sisu, 4 big Sisu, 3 Maldragons. Maldragon is definitely a card that is being played in red-blue again. I think I'm not a big fan of the 3. How far I'll go? I probably like 2, because with the 4 Tipo and the 4 Sail, I think that's decent enough ramp. But the ability to accelerate ramp one more extra turn in order to get to that Maldragon early or that Sisu early is definitely huge. You know, good players like control decks. Good players like to have control of the game. So it's natural that this was going to be one of the more popular decks in the formats for the EU Championships. 4 ice blocks, so they're really going heavy on getting the value off of things like Brawl, which they're only playing 3 of. I'd probably go -1 how far, +1 Brawl personally, but again, teching for the meta, I'm sure this was fine. I do like the one of Let It Go, notably 3 Maui Shark in this build, and only 1 Be Prepared, going very, very reliant or very heavy on the fact that Maldragon and Sisu will carry the removal in this deck. Only 2 Maui as well, which I'm not a huge fan of. I would think at least 3, but again, based on the meta, how valuable is Maui? Most of the time you're just inking it at this point. It's very, I don't want to say niche scenarios now where you'll use him, but his value does seem limited. Like, even when you have the opportunity to play him, your opponent is likely playing around the Maui, so you have to be aware of that as well. The 1 Be Prepared is interesting. 16 uninkables overall. So yeah, I think this list is good. I'd probably go for more Be Prepareds though, maybe -1 Sisu, +1 Be Prepared. And maybe minus another uninkable, maybe -1 ice block, +1 Be Prepared. This card is just too good, man. This card is just too good not to play more copies of it. I mean, I know it gets ripped and stuff, but now with Maui Shark, you can recur from the discard. I just think it's too good not to play. I mean, red-blue unfortunately has the problem that you don't have a way to force tap or force run into a character with the Maui Shark. So, if you're not playing it in like Ruby Amethyst where you can like Elsa tap down, or like Ruby Steel where you can use Pick a Fight on the Maui, but that's kind of more of a niche thing. And the second red-blue list is the one I think we did not see before. Notably different. Okay, much less reliant on the Sisu ice block. Like, I don't know. I think if you play this package, it is very, very strong in my opinion. The problem is that it's all uninkables, right? Like the Medusa, the Sisu, the big Sisu, the ice block, they're all uninkable. If Ice Block was inkable, this deck would be insane. But yeah, the uninkability here hurts it. But I think if you're going to play this package, you just go big on it, like what the other player did. Again, teching for your local meta, teching to what you're comfortable with matters. So I'm glad to see that there is some versatility in this list on 4 Mauis, not 2. 4 Maldragon, so Maldragon being used in both builds. What I will say, Maldragon is still an extremely powerful card. If you get to like turn 6 in the game and you're on like 7 or 8 ink because you're able to ramp once or twice, like 4 how far all goes, 1 jump ahead. So they're valuing the how far all goes over the Tipos. And what is their inkable count? 17 on inkable. So they're getting up there. And 2 fish hooks, right? And no Maui Shark, just the 4 hero to all. So very interesting list. Very to me, this list seems way more combo oriented. I will say one thing I do like is the Pirate's Life, but again, I think you play this with Shark, right? So I would be interested in the concept behind this deck. But sorry, what I was saying before, um, there's a couple of things to unpack with this list, and I think this is important for you to understand if you're trying to like get better at the game. And I'm sure many people know this already, but like I think a Pirate's Life, and I've commented on this before, is a very powerful card because depending on the meta, if you're in a tempo-oriented meta, which it seems like we are, right? We talked about this being like a genie-oriented meta. A lot of these tempo and aggro decks will play to win the game rather than play to prevent losing the game, if that makes sense. So what do I mean by that? If you're playing this control deck and you're going up against like an Emerald Amethyst or any other tempo control deck, you might have a couple things on board, exerted, whatever. They may have the ability to clean up the board and prolong the game state in order to stabilize more. But instead of doing that, they'll just be like, I'm going to quest and put myself on, I have game next turn. And unless you can deal with all of my threats, or even like I'll quest now and I have like a goat in hand or something, and I'm just going to win the game next turn anyways. So like there's nothing you can do. A card like Pirate's Life can throw off that math, right? It can completely flip the favor in or flip the game state in your favor because they will sacrifice the ability for board control in order to push themselves to a game-winning position next turn. And if you can do something like Maldragon, drop, disrupt, sing, Pirate's Life, claw back 2 lore, challenge, clean up the board. Now I have total board control. Yes, you have a goat, but you lost 2 lore, so you can't even goat cycle for game. And I have an established board that I can just continually out. And again, like I said, if you have like something like Shark or whatever, like Recur Pirate's Life, again, conditional because they need an exerted character, but having multiple Pirate's Life, I do like it in theory. Obviously, it worked well for this player, which I'm happy to see because I think it is an important strategy, and I do hope we get more cards for control decks that will allow you to claw back lore because I think the game favors tempo and aggro decks way too much right now, to the point where people like a card game. Again, I don't know what the developers really want for this game, but we know like Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, etc. These other games have a lot of player-to-player interaction. Lorcana is very limited in that, right? You don't play during your opponent's turn at all. There's no counter spells, there's no hand traps, etc. But one of the ways you do interact, one of the only ways you interact, is I need to remove your things from the board, your items, your characters, etc. And another way of interaction is, or another layer that you can add to this game is the lore manipulation, right? We've seen non-questing sources of lore and stuff be important, and I think a Pirate's Life is a good a starting point for a good direction. I think the game should go to add another layer, right? I don't want to say necessarily like widen the skill gap too much because I know they want this game to be still very accessible, but it is very accessible right now, right? I think you can have new players come in just play an aggro deck and run over some of the top players in the game, right? Just because of the nature of how the game is built, and I think that's good, but I do think that we still want to have a little bit of a skill gap. And again, I do think the skill gap is there, don't get me wrong, but I just think we just want a little bit of additional layers to potentially play around with. Moyen's list, opting to go to red-blue. We just saw him play Amethyst Steel in the LCCC. 3 Maui Shark, 3 big Sisu, 2 small Sisu. This is a fine ratio. I would probably go 3 small Sisu, 3 big Sisu, depending on if I was playing 3 or 4 ice blocks. That's the only thing I would probably play, 3 ice blocks. 2 Be Prepared, the 4 Maldragon. So again, you can see like Maldragon is just, it's in there. It's in the list, right? 3 How Far I'll Go, 1 Pirate's Life with the Maui Shark, good utility there. 1 Develop Your Brain, again, just a 1 cost action to recur with the Maui Shark if needed, but also just additional scry with the 4 Visions and the 4 Sails, of course, 4 Brawl. And then everyone's teching in this 1 Great Stone Dragon, right? No longer have to worry about inking every turn. You just ink from your discard, which is kind of cool. 2 Mauis as well, and 2 Madame Medusas. Not top 8, obviously, but Moyen, we all know, is a top player, so interesting to see his list. I am interested in Justin's Sapphire Steel. I do think Justin, from what I've seen, is definitely one of the better Sapphire Steel players for sure. 2 Pete's, 2 Jim Hawkins, so on the shift line. 1 Robin Hood, 2 Ariels, okay. I do like the 3 Whole New Worlds and not 4. I think you rely much more on Hiram, and because you have the Visions as well, like, honestly, guys, like, Sapphire Steel, like, I've made so many variations of this deck because there's so many different ways you can play it. The ability to cantrip for four, like on 4 items is insane in this deck. Like you don't necessarily need the whole new worlds, honestly, because like you're ripping through 8 cards of your deck through these items, plus the scry with the visions, plus the cantrip with the sail. You have 12 cantrips plus visions. You will see your Hiram. You will see it. So this deck, you know, as we get more consistent ways to dig for Hiram or get additional draw spells, you become less reliant on these bricks. And don't get me wrong, a whole new world can be a great card, but how many times have you seen matches where it's like, oh, the player doesn't want to use whole new world because he doesn't want to give the opposing player 7 new cards, and you know he's not really getting the exact specific combo where he's able to play the fishbone, you know, use the fishbone, empty his hand, whole new world. The game is faster now. Players are dumping their hands faster. Players will know to play around a whole new world. So it can be a liability. And playing 4 of this card when you're holding this one in your hand and you're just like, please don't draw another whole new world, and then you draw the other whole new world and you're just like, oh, great, dead draw, dead cards in my hand, right? Like it's not great. The grab your swords, the let it goes, your removal options, as well as fire the cannons, 4 Tinkerbells, of course. You know, the grab your swords, I know this card also seems kind of bricky, but because you play the Tinkerbell and the Jim Hawkins line, I've talked about this a lot with my Sapphire Steel build, you know, the ability to ping for 3 across the whole board, even just ping 1 and then sing for 2 across the board and 3 to 1 thing is usually enough to wipe a board, especially with these low to the ground decks. I think, again, depending on the meta that you're in, a Sapphire Steel deck could be really good because it definitely cleans up a lot of aggro and tempo-oriented decks for sure. Unfortunately, with red blue being the most popular deck in the room that day, no surprise that he struggled a little bit and you know, still did good though, top 32. Like I'd probably go 0 and whatever if I ever attended this, so can't talk too much. I'm definitely trying to learn as much as possible, right, from these decks and analyze them. Next up, we have basically a set 5 Emerald Steel. Right? Nothing from set 6. And this was top 16, right? 11th, yeah, top 16. So I think, you know, if anything, this goes to show you not how much Emerald Steel has fallen off, but even in the LCCC, where you see Dale and Zan piloting Emerald Steel, it's still a strong deck, don't get me wrong, and it still has some very powerful lines of play, but it's not nearly the force it was in set 5. There's just been a lot of cards that have really increase the power level of these other decks. Sail the Azeroth Sea, Genies, the new Diablo. It's very, very strong, right? People were complaining about this Diablo. I really don't think this card is a problem anymore. It was a problem, for sure. It was a problem. But I don't think it's nearly as big of a problem as it was in the previous format. I did talk about, I don't think I talked about it in a video, but I know I talked about it with my friend about Emerald Steel potentially cutting Prince John entirely. Again, I probably won't go into it in this video, but I think either you go like hard on this and you play 4, or you just play 0. As a 2 of, it's just like, do I see it? Do I not see it? Then again, if you play 4 and you have like multiples and it's kind of like a brick, or you're in a bad position, these uninkable cards, like, you know, the new Alice, Tadashi, the 3 cost that allows you to ink twice when it's banished during your opponent's turn, Prince John, these 3 cost uninkable cards, they feel very weak when you're on the draw. And again, that's just me personally. I don't know if, you know, what these top players would think or how you feel as you're watching this. But yeah, it seems like it can be a little bit of a liability sometimes. Very strong on the play though. Very, very strong on the play, right? Yeah, so yeah, this player on 4. 1 of Calhoun, which is very odd as a 1 of. But that's the only set 6 card. Was the other player even on Muses? 11th, right? Top 16. They have to be on Muses, right? They are not on Muses. Wow. So yeah, different list entirely in my opinion, whether you're going Muses or not. So yeah, very interesting to see. Aside from that, I don't think there's... Oh, I guess we could take a look at the other 2 top 4 Ruby Amethyst lists, because I don't think these were reviewed yet on my channel. I know I reviewed the top 2 list, and then I reviewed the top 2 Amethyst, or the top 8 Amethyst Steel lists. But this one crab, 1 Peter Pan Shadow, not too much of a fan of that. I think you'd be better off with 2 crab. Again, this is just me personally. Obviously Lucas knows what he is doing. But I would just be curious as to the thought process behind this Peter Pan, because we've seen this being played in 1. No shark either, right, to give it rush. Not that you'd want to play this solely for that, obviously. But like, what is the reasoning behind this 1 of Peter Pan Shadow? the ability to come in and rush down a character. At a 2/3, like you rush into an opposing genie, sure, but you still need the 2 damage from somewhere else. You're playing this on 3, you have to play it, right? Because it's uninkable. So it just seems like a little bit of a liability card for me. I do like 1 Tremaine, 3 Medusa, again, teching for the meta if you're expecting aggro. 3 Maui, only 2 Queen's Castle. But yeah, the 1 Crab, the 1 Peter Pan just doesn't do it for me. The 3 and 3 ratio is fine. Everything else is pretty standard. Oh, actually, 7 2-drops. So you're a little bit less consistent on being able to play something on 2. Which again, yeah, this list seems very interesting. I would be curious if this player ever did any kind of interviews around this championship. Some of the decisions, like why 3 Flynn, not 4. What, like, in your testing, how much did this impact your ability to play something on 2? Why the 1 Crab and the 1 Shadow Finder? 4 Be Prepareds though, and no big Sisu. A total of 15 uninkables, so maybe a little high on the uninkables as well. And then we take a look at the other list. We've got, okay, again, 7 2-drops and White Rose, only 1 Genie, which is crazy. We've got Detect and Elsa, 1 of Dragonfire as well, no Maui Shark for like Detect Dragonfire, 3 B Preps, 4 Castles. I did try to make the Elsa work. For me, I just couldn't make it work. It's a great card. I think it's a fantastic card still, especially since you can shift it here. But I just couldn't make it work personally. The 1 Sisu, the 2 Medusa, and the 1 Tremaine. So, you know, trading out like a 2 Tremaine for 1 Tremaine, 1 Elsa, I think that's fine. You know, do you end up removing a Tamatoa or just tapping it down? In the end, it probably means the same thing, because at that point in the game, either you're winning or losing within the next turn regardless. I guess the only difference is, like, if they have a lucky dime up, they can still dime the Tamatoa if it's tapped, versus with the Tremaine, obviously they wouldn't be able to. But again, very, very specific interactions. I'm really surprised at the 1 of Genie though. That's very interesting. There's no chance that like the player just couldn't get Genies, right? There had to be a conscious decision to only play 2. The best performing Steel Song list: 1 Doc, 4 Lilo. Okay. I talked about this. I think if you're gonna play Lilo, like 3 is probably enough. But yeah, 4. I mean, 4 is fine, I guess. Like, does it replace Piglet in these lists? I would think so. Is the extra lore worth? Is the extra lore worth the limited playability, right? Whereas this thing always comes back, or always has the potential to come back. The 2 Lawrence, the 3 Pete's, I like that. The 2 Pluto, I think, is fine. The Robin Hood shift package, I think, continues to be very, very strong. Again, format dependent. This thing gets blown out by Ruby, but still extremely good into tempo decks. And, well, I shouldn't even say extremely good, because Amethyst, Emerald can still deal with Genie quite well, or deal with Robin Hood quite well. On the 4 Simbas, though, how many uninkables? 15 in total, okay. 2 Zeus. I'm interested to see what Frank Carson ended up playing, how different his list would have been from Ratatouille, best Disney movie, from what he played in the LCC. 2 Simbas instead of 4, 3 Zeus instead of 2, I think, added in a World's Greatest. Instant way to deal with sharks, which wasn't really that popular, but Tamatoas mainly is what you probably wanted you to use this against. Yeah, 3 Lilos, I like that. 3 Simbas, because you're reducing your Simba ratio there, that's fine. I think he increased the Cinderellas. I do like the extra Pete's. The 1 of Lawrence, I guess that's fine, because ideally you want to play Ariel on 3, I imagine. You probably don't play Pete on 3. So having another option, like 5 3-drops that you want to play, is fine. Up the Naveen to 2 instead of just the 1. I guess that makes sense, because you add in the extra Zeus, so this just gives you an extra outlet right away. But yeah, Steel Song, you know, Frank Carson, definitely one of the best players, if not the best Steel Song player. So yeah, good results from the championship. And yeah, we already talked a little bit about the challenge here. I guess the last thing we'll review, and again, maybe we'll post up a second video, is this. I believe this was, I'm actually not sure. Are these just collection of like LCQ decks, maybe. Artifacts running the same list in the European Championship as this event. Racelam, hopefully I'm saying that correctly. On the 3 Bonsai on this list, only 3 Merfolk. On the Snakes, only 2 Kit instead of 3 or 4. On the Bells, on the Prince Phillips, okay, and 1 of Friends. That's so random. Like, what? I don't understand that. The 3 Genies, 3 Rabbits, okay. The 2 Bells, 3 Elsa, and the 2 Clarabelle. 2 Pan Shadows. That's really interesting. I mean, I guess this... Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. Pan Shadow, I mean, I understand if you're in a Diablo meta, but, like, I don't know, I just struggle to see the value with Pan Shadow overall. A unique list is definitely Mufasa, Steel Fossa. 2 Robin Hoods with no oh yeah, 3 shifts. Very, very interesting list. The Chenpos, the Gontu. I mean, what is your Mufasa trying to hit here? I don't know. It just seems like a lot of things that you would hit here are not going to be very good, right? Again, I'm not criticizing the deck. I'm just trying to understand it. And I hit any of these 1-drops, I feel bad. I hit this 2-drop, I feel bad. I hit this 2-drop, I probably feel bad. Smee coming in, sure, it's a 3/3 body. I mean, just the fact that Mufasa replaces itself is fine. And again, the deck doesn't necessarily have to core focus around the Mufasa. It just, like, Mufasa is in the deck, right? There'll be games where you don't even play Mufasa. You just go aggro and you win the game. But if you do hit off the Mufasa, you're really dependent. Like, if this is your 5-drop, you're really depending on this thing putting in some work, right? We know Mufasa's win or lose the game sometimes based on what they hit with the Mufasa. You know, if you hit a Gontu and it comes in exerted and your opponent just has an answer to it, that's just like, that's not great, right? Like, your Gontu gets outed. I mean, it probably trades, at least, but I guess that's not even that bad, right? Because even if you hit a Gontu, like, your opponent was forced to interact with the Mufasa, they probably, you know, they go -1, most likely, unless they challenge and live, and then whatever you hit off, even if you hit a Gontu, the Gontu gets traded out because your opponent has to run into this. So your 1 Mufasa potentially takes up 2 cards, which I guess is not the worst. So yeah, interesting list. 4 Baloos. How many Uninkables? 14 overall. 2 Calhouns. It just seems like there's a couple of bad hits in there, but I think that's it, though. I think we're going to wrap it up there. This video is probably getting kind of long, but it's very interesting to see how the meta shaped up. Let me know what you've been playing, if you made it this far in the video, what you like. Has the EU Championship influenced what you've played or are playing? And yeah, we'll do another meta report, I'm sure, after this weekend. If you made it this far in the video, though, thank you for watching. Quantum is out.